All right, we should be getting going. So this is Colleen Riddle here live with Sara Haley. So excited to interview her. We are both in the same world of pre and postnatal pregnancy and love helping women get fit. So I just wanted to take a few minutes and interview Sara today. So Sara, tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your background and how did you get involved in this?
Sure. I'll try to give you the short version, which is I'm from Chicago. I lived in New York City, and now I live in Santa Monica, right outside Los Angeles. And I have two children. They are 5 and 2. I have two boys. And pre-kids, when I lived in New York, I was a dancer turned fitness professional, and I worked primarily for Reebok. I traveled all around the world for them and trained other instructors and was their go-to person for anything. And that could be DVDs, PR stuff, being their spokesperson for stuff on the news, whatever it was. I was kind of their person for everything. And then I did everything else that I think most good fitness professionals do, which is personal train and teach classes and create stuff of their own all the time. And I had a lot of friends in the Midwest who were having babies before me saying, Sara, when are you going to do pregnancy stuff? And I'm a petite girl, so I would say for the most part, my clients were all women. And a lot of them at that period were having babies, were thinking about having babies, had just had babies. And I was working for another trainer at the time who wasn't pre and postnatal certified. And I had been because I had all these women coming to me. And as you know, that's the best way to keep them safe is to know what to do. So I hadn't done like a really general certification to just kind of know the ins and outs, but I never really dove into it because it didn't hit home with me personally quite yet. Mm-hmm. And so I knew enough to keep them safe, but I really feel like compared to what I know now, I didn't know as much as I should. And I probably also didn't know how much they possibly could do. I think when you don't know, you sometimes also just get scared, and so you don't let them do anything.
Exactly.
And so the point that I'm getting to is once I had my own first baby, which was right before I was actually in transition from New York to LA. We decided to make the LA move while I was pregnant. And I was working for Reebok and I was shooting a lot of DVDs, and I said, all right, I want to shoot a pregnancy DVD because once I started doing my research, as you know, there was nothing like out there besides prenatal yoga, really.
Right.
For the most part. And if there was, it was very, very basic training, which to me was for somebody who had never worked out before. There was nothing for the clientele like us, which is somebody who's super active and now is pregnant and maybe a little bit tentative, but still wants to be inspired and be challenged and still be safe.
Right.
So once it was happening in my own body, I was like, all right, I'm figuring this out. And that was kind of when I started my own company, which has become a pre and postnatal, mostly pre and postnatal. I still do a lot of other stuff, but mostly pre and postnatal based because it's become my obsession now that I actually live in that world myself.
Right.
And I'm so glad that I do. And I'm so glad I'm so glad there's so many of us like you as well that are, because it is such a niche market and there's not a lot of people that actually know what they're doing it.
Exactly. You're right. And, I think you hit a nail on the head is that there's not a lot out there for people to really challenge themselves through pregnancy. And so many people are so scared to do anything. So then they don't do anything. And I remember somebody commented on one of my videos, like, wow, I finally got a great workout that felt safe, but so many other workouts out there are like geriatric. I was cracking.
Totally. Totally. It's like one extreme or the other. They're either like totally not safe and you're like, that woman's pelvic floor is going to fall out after she has her baby.
Right.
Or, she's doing that like 10 days. Like I was literally, and I'm sure you can relate to this as well, on Instagram the other day. And like these women were posting photos of themselves like 10 days postnatal doing jumping jacks. And I'm just thinking, oh my God, their pelvic floor, like they might feel okay right now, but like a year from now, they're going to be like, what did I do?
Right.
And yeah, so it works both ways. People either, are, and I think it's usually when they're not working with a trainer, right, they're totally to one extreme and they're doing unsafe things. And then I think, unfortunately, when they're with a trainer who maybe isn't pre and postnatal certified, truly, mm-hmm, the trainer gets scared and then they're just like not letting them do anything.
Right. Right. So what would be like do you have your favorite like 5 go-to exercises? Someone who's busy, maybe doesn't have a lot of time to work out throughout their pregnancy. Do you have like a few go-to exercises that you're like, okay, if nothing else, make sure you get these exercises in for you to.
Yeah, I mean, the first one, everyone's going to hate that I'm saying this because everybody says it, but it's Kegels.
Yep.
And I am like the worst at it too. I don't do them nearly enough, but it's the only way to really get those deep, deep, deep core muscles functioning in the right way during pregnancy, but mostly to save you in your postnatal recovery.
Right.
So I would say that. Everybody has their own version of this. I call it interlocking your TVA. So for my listeners who aren't familiar, your TVA is your transverse abdominis. It's your deepest core muscles. And we really need to learn how to use those. Again, more so for our postnatal recovery. But for me, that means, taking your hands if you're pregnant to your baby, inhaling, exhaling, and learning how to soften that rib cage and try to kind of bring those muscles. Again, I feel like I don't know what your opinion is, but I feel like that's such a challenging thing to do when you're pregnant.
Well,
because you're like, there's this baby in the way. How am I doing this? But learning how to activate those muscles so that you can find them in your post when they've been so, put through this trauma really of pregnancy, trying to find them in post is like, what? So I always say, like, even if you're thinking about getting pregnant, learn how to use those muscles, because during your pregnancy, it kind of like gets all out of whack.
Well, yeah.
And trying to find them in post is so difficult.
And just putting that mind in the muscle to get that mind muscle connection.
What do you call that? I know everybody kind of has their own version of it.
I just call it the deep transverse abdominals. And there's no other way to describe it. And I really work with my clients that aren't pregnant with that, because a lot of times people just have a hard time connecting with that. Like, well, what do you mean? What is that? And teaching people to get in tune with that, like you said, before their pregnancy. And then just being aware, like I even say things like, when you open the refrigerator door, like engage your core when you open the refrigerator door instead of just pulling, just little things like that of trying to put the mind in the muscle.
Right. I mean, and even like I said, with picking up your kids, I mean, you've been taught your entire life, like learn how to use your legs to squat. It's the same thing here. Learn how to use your TVA so that you don't end up with a diastasis, right? Which is, I mean, I'm sure you're dealing with your people that aren't even pregnant, because you could have a diastasis recti and not ever have had a baby, or have had a baby like 20 years ago.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's awesome. Any other go-tos?
Yeah, I love bridges. So for those of you guys who don't know, that's lying on your back. I'm sure you've done it at some point in your life. Really learning how to activate your glutes, because all of these, by the way, are selfishly things that I have to remind myself to do. And I always think, if I was personal training myself, what would I tell myself to do? Because my glute activation is really poor. So I think during pregnancy, because we want to let the core muscles do their thing and allow your baby to grow, activating your glutes. So squats and bridges, I would kind of put them, even though they're not the same exercise, in the same category, because you have to get the legs and butt strong, support that baby. And then I would say, let's say plank variety, because I've kind of been so obsessed with diastasis lately, and research is now showing us that planks are not necessarily the best thing for diastasis, but I do think they are important in moderation, and finding some different ways to do that, whether that means doing a plank elevated onto a chair or just onto a wall. But it's a really great way to work your entire body, and still keep your core intact and strong.
Right. That's awesome. Those are great tips. What about your upper back? Like I always help them.
Yeah, rows and reverse flies and all that good stuff.
Everything's pulling them, pulling you forward. So to strengthen that, upper back area.
Yeah. As I sit here like this and talk to you, you're like looking at me and you're like, let me help her. No, but it's true. I mean, I've got a 2-year-old that's like obsessed with me right now. So I have to remind myself, it's the worst.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, let's talk for a second about nutrition. We both know how important nutrition is while you're pregnant, postnatal. But, so many times I find that people kind of give their excuse of, oh, well, I'm eating for 2, so I can eat whatever I want. What's your advice about that?
So I will first and foremost say, just talking to you a little bit before this interview, it sounds like you have a much bigger nutrition background than I do. So I do not consider myself a nutritionist at all, but I get asked this all the time. So I do willingly share what I've always told people, what I do myself, which I think live like you live. I mean, the most you need is like 250, 350 extra calories. And that's really not even until your second or third trimester.
Right.
So those cravings that you think you have in your first trimester, honestly, I think just this switch goes on. You're like, I'm pregnant. Oh, I must be having cravings. And you're like, no. Okay, it's like people always ask me, what do I crave during my pregnancy? Tortilla chips and guacamole. Guess what? I crave tortilla chips and guacamole all the time. It's not just during pregnancy. It's just during pregnancy, I might say, oh, well, I'm pregnant. So I say, especially if your activity level is different. So like I actually, when I'm pregnant, never think about taking in extra calories because my activity goes down so much in terms of intensity, really. Not necessarily in terms of how, well, my first pregnancy probably varied drastically because I made this kind of huge transition from working in fitness full time. Sure. But, especially with my second, just the intensity of my workouts went down. So I was automatically not burning as many calories. Right. So I didn't think so much about extra calorie intake, especially as I was getting bigger and bigger because, my activity level was going down and down. So I really think for the most part, for the majority of us, right, that are active people, I should say, don't worry about it really at all. It shouldn't be part of that. Taking in the right foods is a whole different thing. Like, taking your sweet potatoes and your Greek yogurt and all these things that are going to really help your baby. Right. But again, if that's the way you were living prior to that, I really think that people have been having babies forever. Right. And we've all turned out pretty darn well without being obsessed about this stuff. So I just think it doesn't need to be as much of a thing as people think about, but unless it's on the extreme end, like you're talking about, where someone goes and off the deep end right. and enjoys that too much. There's so many other things that are going to be affected. And again, I go back to, especially if you're an active person, that to go to that route, if you're already decreasing your activity some, you're just setting yourself up for a really hard postnatal recovery.
That's the thing, exactly. And that's what I think, if we can help people realize you're taking in all that extra that your body doesn't need, and then you've got it on you, and then you've got to lose it, and it makes it so much harder postnatal.
Yeah. And I was just watching, I just did these clips on my YouTube channel of the last one we just did. It was a bunch of a lot of them actually are in the fitness industry, the funniest things that happened during their pregnancy. And then another one was like the most challenging things. And one of the women did say, like, she gained all of her weight. It ended up being like a funny story, but she gained all of her weight in the first trimester, which was like 55 pounds. But I think it's because she had been such an active person, probably maybe too active. Right. And when she changed her activity level, her body was just like, whoa, what's
going on? Yeah.
Right. So imagine if she'd done that. And then, maybe part of that was eating foods that she hadn't eaten, or too much of foods. So I just think to not get so obsessed about that, but be more obsessed about what you're taking in instead of how much.
Exactly. Couldn't agree with you more. I loved that video, by the way. I saw that one about the funniest things that happened during pregnancy. I was cracking up. That was really good.
Well, if you can't laugh during it, I don't know how else to get through it, really.
Right. Now, what about a lot of times, what's your advice for energy? A lot of times, pregnant women, they with low energy. Do you have any tips or advice for that?
Shocker. I'm going to say working out.
Right.
And I'm going to say do it right. Do it as soon as you can in the day, because I already think when you're not pregnant, that's the hardest thing, right? We get tired as they get closer to the end of the day. Well, when you're carrying a child and they're taking all your nutrients, you're getting even more tired by the end of the day. Right. But I think all the things that we've actually just talked about, exercising early in the day, eating the right foods, it doesn't necessarily mean like I need energy, so let me eat more food. It means I need to put certain foods into my body. Honestly, there's no secrets, really. Yeah. There's no secrets other than taking care of yourself and getting enough sleep. And my number one tip for everybody that's pregnant is always listen to your body. So if it's a day where you are exhausted, then you are probably, and this is motherhood. This is why I think for so many of us, our fitness levels sometimes change in motherhood, is that you are your priorities change.
Sure.
so drastically, at least that's been my experience and most of my friends' experience, that you have to start making choices where before I could work out whenever I wanted for however long I wanted. Now
Right.
sometimes I'm choosing sleep over a workout, let alone my kids. I mean, my kids are obviously my number one priority, but then sometimes it's like, do I sleep or do I work out?
Right.
So you have to start kind of thinking that way during your pregnancy too. And you might as well do it while you don't actually have a child if it's your first pregnancy.
Yeah. Oh, I was just talking to a client today that she just had her third. You know, she's like, I'm committed to come to you once a week. She's like, but that's all I can do. She's like, when I have some time, it's because sometimes I just want to sleep. And I'm like, that's okay. Listen to your body,
Yeah.
do what you can, and sometimes the tips I give too is just, like just do 10 minutes. Like, and if at 10 minutes you're still exhausted, then stop, rest, sometimes that 10 minutes will, will get our
100%.
So.
Well, and not to push both of our DVDs, but I will.
Yes.
And that's the great thing is, I mean, so many times during pregnancy, whether it's in your first trimester, especially like, my third time mommies, you're showing like right away and you're not necessarily ready to tell people. Doing at-home workouts is probably the best thing that you can do. So sticking that in your DVD player. And again, like you're saying, just commit to doing the 10 minutes, or I'm sure you do. I know both of us probably have 10-minute workouts. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something, goes for pregnancy, not pregnancy. Something is always better than nothing.
I love you. That's exactly what I say. I love talking to someone so like-minded. This is fun.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's what I have. And again, I have to take my own advice.
Absolutely.
I'm like, oh, if I can't get 60 minutes, and why am I going to even bother going?
Yeah.
But you always feel better at the end of the day for doing 10 push-ups than doing no push-ups.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think getting that mentality out of your head. And then when you mentioned the 10 minutes, it made me think of something else. Oh, just doing the 10 minutes. It'll come to me.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. So tell us more as we're kind of wrapping up here, where can people find more about you?
SaraHaley.com is where my pre and postnatal workouts live. On social media, I'm at Sara Haley Fit everywhere. And that means YouTube or Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, all that good stuff. And my DVDs are also available on Amazon.
Okay, great. Awesome.
So, yeah. What about you?
Prenatalworkouts.com is where mine are, pre and postnatal. And same thing, YouTube. I've got free YouTube videos on there for prenatal. And I'm just so great to meet you. Thank you so much for taking time out. Is there any last minute advice or anything that, I just covered a couple things to keep it short, but is there anything else you want to share with everybody?
I guess I would just say for my pregnant people and my new moms and even my not new moms is that just remember that we're all going through this. I just feel like there's so many moments in pregnancy and in motherhood where you do feel really alone in terms of like, this is so hard right now. I don't know if I'm going to get through it. Whether that means changing your eating habits, getting your workouts in, getting some sleep, dealing with your children, dealing with your spouse, whatever it is, and we're all dealing with these kinds of things in our own way, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I think sometimes I have to remind myself of like, this is what everybody's going through in their own way.
Right.
And it's all hard. It's all wonderful. But there's moments there for everybody. So I think that's kind of where I've been living the past couple months is just it's probably the age of my kids. I don't know. But I think just that reminder and surrounding yourself with other moms.
Yeah.
I know what my tip was going to be.
Oh, good.
Because it was what you said about your client. And then you mentioned the 10-minute workouts, which is, I think that's why it's so great that she can schedule a workout with you because she knows if I schedule it with Colleen, I'm going to get it in.
Yeah.
So I have been like hugely like calendar blocking. I have this passion journal that I'm using now. And calendar blocking has been helping me a ton. So literally on Sunday night, looking at your week and writing it in. And if it's the workouts that you're struggling with, putting a big star or stickers or highlighting it or whatever and making sure that it's in your calendar and getting it in there so that you'll get it done. And whether that means scheduling something with a personal trainer, scheduling a class, or just, showing your spouse or showing a friend an accountability partner.
Right. Those are
because
awesome.
statistics show that 50% more success rate when you are being held accountable sometimes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that was my tip.
Yes, that's perfect. And making it a point with yourself, just like you were going to the dentist, just like you were going to the doctor, and, you know, making yourself a priority. Because like you said, the priorities do change, but you've got to fill yourself up in order to give everything you want to give to your family and everyone else around you. So
yeah. And remember that when you're feeling guilty. I love that tip too, because when you're feeling guilty, whoever's making you feel guilty, whether it's you or your spouse or whoever, remind yourself you are going to be a better mom, a better person if you get it done.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, great. All right. Well, thank you, Sarah, so much.
Thank you.
I'm going to stop the recording. Hang tight 1 sec.